Most Americans have never heard of the Alabama solution, but inside these walls, it's a name that strikes fear. Guards, inmates, policies that shock the conscience. Today, we're going inside one of the most controversial prison systems in the United States, a system where every corridor hides secrets, every cell tells a story, and every policy has consequences that stretch far beyond the prison gates. Before we go any deeper, hit that subscribe button, tap the notification bell, and drop a comment below, because what you're about to witness inside these walls is darker than most true crime documentaries ever reveal. Holman Correctional Facility, located in Atmore, Alabama, is not just any prison. It is a living, breathing experiment of control, punishment, and, at least in theory, reform. Known as the epicenter of the Alabama solution, Holman houses some of the state's most dangerous offenders, those who have committed crimes ranging from violent murder to complex gang-related offenses. But it is not just the severity of the inmates' crimes that makes this prison infamous. It's the system itself, designed to exert total authority over every inch of an inmate's existence. The term Alabama solution might sound clinical, but for those living within these walls, it is anything but neutral. It is a philosophy, a blueprint, a mechanism of psychological and physical control that has been debated and condemned across the nation. Solitary confinement, regimented routines, and strict hierarchies define the daily life of prisoners here. Every decision, every interaction, every step is monitored, logged, and judged. For some, this system breaks spirits. For others, it reinforces survival instincts in ways that outsiders cannot imagine. As you watch this documentary, keep in mind that what you see here is not Hollywood fiction. These are real inmates, real guards, and real policies, each contributing to a complex ecosystem where human psychology, law enforcement, and correctional philosophy collide. This is Holman Correctional Facility, America's most controversial prison system. Before we continue, make sure to hit the like button. Your support helps us dive deeper into these hidden stories. Share this video with anyone who thinks they know what life behind bars is like, because what happens here will shock even the most seasoned true crime fan. Walking through the halls of Holman, one cannot ignore the tension. The heavy clanging of cell doors echoes down the corridors, a constant reminder of the authority that looms over every inmate. Guards patrol with precision, their eyes scanning every movement, their radios crackling with coded messages. For the inmates, every action is scrutinized. A minor infraction can lead to solitary confinement, loss of privileges, or worse. It's a place where discipline is absolute and mercy is rare. Yet, beyond the surface, a complex social ecosystem exists. Inmates form alliances, rivalries, and networks, often marked by tattoos that tell stories of allegiance, loyalty, and defiance. The prison yard becomes a battlefield of psychology and power, where survival is as much about reading people as it is about enduring punishment. Every corner, every shadow, every interaction holds potential danger or opportunity. Let's talk about solitary confinement, one of the most infamous aspects of the Alabama solution. Known colloquially as the hole, solitary is used to control the most disruptive inmates or those deemed threats to order. Inmates are confined for 23 hours a day in small, bare cells, stripped of almost all human interaction. The psychological toll is immense. Many describe feeling time stretch endlessly, senses sharpen, and emotions fluctuate between despair and hallucination. Solitary is not punishment alone. It is control at its most extreme. As we explore this system, comment below if you've ever wondered how long-term isolation impacts the human mind. Your thoughts help us understand the curiosity and concern of viewers like you. But life in Holman isn't only defined by confinement and control. There are moments of raw humanity. Inmates cling to routines, form bonds, and even pursue education or work programs when permitted. These small acts of agency become lifelines, coping mechanisms that allow them to endure an otherwise oppressive environment. The prison administration, for its part, justifies these measures as necessary for security and rehabilitation. But critics argue that the Alabama solution crosses lines that should never be tested, raising ethical and legal questions that continue to reverberate across the nation. Every cell block tells a story. Some are marked by violence, graffiti, and the scars of previous inmates. Others are surprisingly quiet, a testament to order enforced through fear and routine. Guards and officers move with methodical efficiency, their presence a constant reminder that in Holman, order is maintained at all costs. Yet even within this strict structure, chaos can erupt. Fights, attempted escapes, and contraband discoveries punctuate the monotony, demonstrating the fragile balance that keeps the system functioning. Here's something you need to know. Tattoos in Holman are not just art, they are language. Symbols etched into the skin communicate affiliation, rank, and even history within the prison. A single glance at a wrist, neck, or forearm can reveal allegiances that could mean life or death. These markings are as much a part of the Alabama solution as the cells themselves, a visual code woven into the social fabric of prison life. As we walk further into the story, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. There's more inside that will shock you, and you won't want to miss it. The Alabama solution is not just controversial. It's a system that challenges what we think we know about justice, rehabilitation, and punishment. The administration argues that these measures are necessary to maintain safety in a high-security environment. Inmates, however, describe a world where fear governs every decision, where alliances are necessary for survival, and where the line between order and cruelty is razor-thin. Some survive by conformity, others by cunning. Yet for all, the psychological burden is heavy, and the consequences of failure are immediate and severe. In this documentary, you will meet inmates who have lived through these extremes. You will hear accounts of daily routines that seem almost ritualistic in their intensity. You will witness how guards enforce rules with unwavering precision, and how even minor infractions are punished to send a message to others. And you will see the human cost, the families, the minds, and the lives altered forever by a system designed to exert absolute control. Hit the like button now if you're ready to see inside America's most controversial prison system. Share this video with true crime fans, legal enthusiasts, or anyone curious about life behind bars. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. Do you think the Alabama solution is reform, punishment, or something far darker? Finally, as we conclude Chapter 1, remember, this is just the beginning. The Alabama solution is more than a set of policies. It is a lens into human psychology, power, and survival under extreme conditions. The following chapters will take you deeper into the inner workings of this prison, including the most shocking policies, the social hierarchies, and the untold stories of those who endure life within these walls. If this chapter showed you the structure of the Alabama solution, this chapter will take you inside it, into the daily reality of the men forced to survive under its weight. This is where policies stop being words on paper and start becoming lived experiences. This is where control turns personal. Before we step deeper, make sure you're still subscribed, because what you're about to hear rarely makes it outside these walls. And if this documentary is opening your eyes, tap the like button now. It tells the algorithm these stories matter. Every morning inside Holman Correctional Facility begins the same way: noise. Not chaos, but controlled disruption. Radios crackle, boots strike concrete. Steel doors slide open with a sound that inmates learn to read like a warning. For the men inside, wake up isn't a fresh start. It's a continuation of survival. There is no easing into the day. The system does not allow softness. Inmates rise from narrow bunks in cells built for one person, but often holding two. Overcrowding isn't an exception here. It's the norm. Bodies adjust to limited space, limited air, limited privacy. You learn how to move without touching, how to exist without provoking, how to watch everything without appearing to watch anything at all. Daily movement is strictly controlled. When doors open, it's never freedom, it's permission. Permission to walk in lines. Permission to speak in measured tones. Permission to exist under observation. Cameras watch from corners. Guards watch from towers. And inmates watch each other even more closely than the officers do. If you're watching this and wondering how anyone adapts to this kind of pressure, leave a comment below. Because adaptation is the key to survival here, and it doesn't come without cost. Power inside Holman doesn't flow from one source. Officially, the guards hold authority. Unofficially, power is fractured, layered, and constantly negotiated. Inmate hierarchies form quickly, shaped by reputation, sentence length, physical presence, and affiliation. Tattoos play a critical role in this world. Inked across arms, necks, and torsos, They communicate history without a word being spoken. Allegiance, experience, warnings. A tattoo can open doors or close them forever. Some markings represent gangs. Others memorialize violence, lost family, or time served. In a place where words can be used against you, skin becomes testimony, and everyone knows how to read it. The yard is where these hierarchies become visible. It looks open, but it's anything but free. Groups cluster instinctively, separated by race, region, or affiliation. Crossing invisible boundaries can lead to swift consequences. There's no map posted on the wall, but every inmate learns it fast. Guards watch the yard carefully, but they don't see everything. They can't. Too much happens in silence. A glance held too long. A shoulder turned at the wrong moment. A debt remembered. Violence here isn't constant, but it's always possible, and the threat of it shapes every decision. If this tension feels unreal to you, share this video with someone who thinks prison life is just locked doors and orange jumpsuits. The truth is far more complex and far more dangerous. Meals are another exercise in control. Food lines move quickly, efficiently. Talking is discouraged. Trays are inspected. Portions are minimal. For many inmates, hunger becomes a background noise, always present, rarely addressed. Commissary items become currency. A packet of noodles can hold more value than money ever did on the outside. Those without outside support feel it the most. No family sending funds. No care packages. Just dependence on the system and whatever alliances can be formed inside. Vulnerability here is visible and often exploited. Work assignments, when available, offer brief escapes from the monotony. Kitchen duty, maintenance, laundry. These jobs come with risks but also rewards. Movement, purpose, sometimes extra food. But even work is tightly monitored. Privileges can disappear instantly, revoked without explanation. Education programs exist, but access is limited. Classes are interrupted by lockdowns. Books are restricted. Learning becomes an act of quiet resistance, a way to remind yourself you're more than your inmate number. And then there's lockdown. When Holman goes into lockdown, everything stops. Cells close. Movement ceases. Time stretches. Lockdowns can last hours or days. No warning. No explanation. Just confinement intensified. For inmates already spending most of their lives in restricted space, lockdown is punishment layered on punishment. If you've ever wondered what extended confinement does to the human mind, hit the like button right now, because the psychological toll here is invisible but devastating. Mental health struggles are widespread. Anxiety, depression, paranoia, emotional numbness. But treatment is scarce. Requests are delayed. Medications are inconsistent. And showing weakness can make you a target. So many inmates suffer in silence, masking fear with toughness, despair with indifference. Guards operate under pressure too. Long shifts, understaffing, constant vigilance. They work in an environment where trust is fragile and mistakes can be fatal. Some enforce rules rigidly, believing strictness prevents chaos. Others grow hardened, detached, emotionally distant. A few try to treat inmates with dignity, but the system doesn't make that easy. This tension between staff and inmates defines daily life. Respect can reduce conflict. Disrespect can ignite it. And the line between the two is often razor thin. Contraband exists despite constant searches. Phones, drugs, weapons improvised from everyday objects. Their presence isn't just rule-breaking, it's a symptom, a sign of demand created by deprivation. Every confiscated item tells a story about what the system fails to provide. And when contraband is found, punishment is swift. Solitary confinement returns. Privileges vanish. Time stretches again. As you're watching this, drop a comment. Do you believe strict control maintains safety, or does it create the very chaos it claims to prevent? What makes Holman different isn't just the severity of control, it's the normalization of it. Over time, the extreme becomes routine. Silence becomes comfort. Surveillance becomes background noise. Survival becomes the only goal. Inmates stop counting days. They count routines instead. Meals, counts, lockdowns, yard time. Life reduces itself to repetition. Hope becomes dangerous because it makes disappointment sharper. And yet, hope persists. Some men mentor others quietly. Some write letters they may never send. Some pray. Some plan for release even when release feels impossible. Humanity survives in fragments here, stubborn, and fragile. As Chapter 2 closes, understand this. Life inside Alabama's most controversial prison system isn't defined by constant violence. It's defined by constant pressure. Pressure to conform. Pressure to endure. Pressure to survive without losing yourself entirely. Stay with us. Don't click away. The next chapter takes us deeper into the policies, punishments, and decisions that make the Alabama solution one of the most debated correctional systems in America. And if you're still here, subscribe now, because what's coming next is even harder to ignore. By the time an inmate truly understands life inside Holman Correctional Facility, it's already too late. The rules aren't explained in detail. They're learned through consequence. And under the Alabama solution, punishment isn't just corrective, it's instructional. Every sanction is designed to send a message, not only to the individual, but to everyone watching. If you're still with us, make sure you're subscribed, because this chapter exposes the engine that keeps this prison running. And hit the like button now. It helps ensure these stories don't stay buried behind concrete walls. Discipline at Holman is absolute. Infractions that might seem minor on the outside, talking during count, standing in the wrong place, possessing unauthorized items, can trigger serious consequences. The system operates on zero tolerance, and discretion is rare. Officers document everything. Reports pile up. Paper trails follow inmates for years, shaping how they are treated, where they are housed, and whether they ever earn small privileges back. At the center of this system is isolation. Solitary confinement is not an occasional tool here. It is a foundation. Under the Alabama solution, isolation is used not just for violence, but for disobedience, suspicion, or prevention. Some inmates enter solitary without ever committing a physical offense. Being labeled a risk is often enough. Cells are small, bare, designed for containment, not comfort. Light is controlled. Sound is limited. Human interaction is stripped down to commands and brief exchanges through steel doors. Days blur together. Time loses meaning, and the mind begins to turn inward. If you've ever wondered what extended isolation does to a person, pause for a second and comment below, because what happens here is one of the most controversial aspects of American corrections today. Inmates describe solitary as a place where thoughts become louder than reality, where memories replay uncontrollably, where anger, regret, and fear mix until they're indistinguishable. Some talk to themselves just to hear a voice. Others pace endlessly. A few shut down entirely, conserving emotion the way others conserve food. Mental health evaluations exist on paper, but access is limited. Requests are delayed. Sessions are brief. Treatment is inconsistent. And once an inmate is labeled difficult, the system often responds with more control, not more care. Critics argue that this creates a cycle. Punishment causes psychological damage, which leads to behavioral issues, which then justify further punishment. Supporters claim isolation is necessary to maintain order in a volatile environment. Both sides agree on one thing: solitary changes people. But isolation is only one layer of control. Movement restrictions define daily life. Inmates are escorted in groups or not at all. Entire cell blocks can be locked down for the actions of one individual. Collective punishment is a strategy here, reinforcing peer enforcement. When one man breaks a rule, everyone feels it. This pressure forces inmates to police each other. Silence becomes survival. Accountability shifts inward, away from staff, and toward the inmate population itself. It's efficient, and it's deeply controversial. If this system surprises you, share this documentary, because very few people outside these walls understand how power really operates here. Another pillar of the Alabama solution is unpredictability. Routine exists, but it's fragile. Counts change without notice. Yard time disappears suddenly. Meals are delayed. Lockdowns are imposed without explanation. This instability keeps inmates off balance, reducing their ability to organize or resist. Psychologically, unpredictability is powerful. It creates dependence. It trains compliance. When you never know what's coming, you stop planning. You stop hoping. You focus only on getting through the next hour. For many inmates, the most difficult part isn't the punishment itself, it's the waiting. Waiting to find out how long isolation will last. Waiting for a response to a grievance. Waiting to hear if privileges will be restored. Waiting without information becomes its own form of control. Disciplinary hearings exist, but outcomes often feel predetermined. Inmates describe proceedings that last minutes, where their voices are barely heard. Appeals are possible, but slow. Meanwhile, the punishment continues. As you're watching this, hit the like button again if you're still here, because retention matters, and so does exposing the reality of these systems. Use of force policies further define the environment. Officers are trained to maintain control at all costs. Restraints, extraction teams, and chemical agents are authorized when compliance fails. These tools are framed as necessary safeguards, but their application is heavily scrutinized. Body cameras and reports exist, yet accountability is complex. Investigations take time. Evidence is reviewed internally. For inmates, justice feels distant, abstract, and rarely in their favor. This imbalance of power shapes every interaction. Inmates learn when to speak and when to stay silent. Guards learn which battles to fight and which to avoid. Mutual distrust becomes normal. Cooperation becomes transactional. And then there's the classification system. Inmates are constantly assessed, categorized, and reassigned. Security levels shift. Housing changes. One incident can move a man from relative stability into high restriction. These classifications affect access to programs, visitation, and even basic movement. For many, the fear of reclassification is enough to enforce obedience. The threat of being sent back to isolation, or worse, to a more volatile unit, hangs over every decision. If you're starting to see how layered this system is, drop a comment, because understanding this machinery is key to understanding why Alabama's prison system remains so controversial. Family contact is another controlled variable. Phone calls are limited. Visits are regulated. Infractions can result in complete loss of communication. For inmates, this separation is devastating. Family becomes both motivation and vulnerability. The system knows this and uses it. Mail is screened. Delays are common. Some letters never arrive. Connection to the outside world becomes fragile, filtered, and uncertain. Rehabilitation is often cited as a goal of the Alabama solution, but critics argue punishment overwhelms any chance of reform. Programs exist in theory, but lockdowns interrupt them. Transfers disrupt progress. Isolation undermines emotional stability. Supporters counter that order must come first, that without control, rehabilitation is impossible. This debate has raged for years, drawing attention from advocacy groups, federal investigators, and civil rights organizations. Yet inside Holman, these debates feel distant. Inmates don't argue philosophy. They respond to reality. And reality is shaped by punishment. As Chapter 3 closes, one truth becomes clear. The Alabama solution is not just about incarceration. It is about conditioning, training behavior through consequence, managing populations through pressure, and maintaining control through systems that rarely bend. Stay with us. Don't leave now. Chapter 4 takes us into the human cost, the families, the psychological fallout, and the lives permanently altered by this system. And if this documentary is changing how you see the justice system, subscribe now, because the hardest truths are still ahead. By the time we reach this point in the story, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. The Alabama solution does not exist in isolation. Its effects don't stop at the prison gates. They ripple outward, into families, into communities, and into the minds of everyone trapped within its reach. This chapter isn't about policy or punishment alone. It's about what's left behind. If you're still watching, stay with us. And if these stories matter to you, hit the like button now, because visibility is the first step toward accountability. For every man locked inside Holman Correctional Facility, there are people on the outside living a parallel sentence. Mothers waiting by silent phones. Children growing up with memories instead of presence. Partners learning how to love through letters, monitored calls, and brief visits separated by glass. Families adjust their lives around visitation schedules that can change without notice. Long drives, security checks, dress codes, waiting rooms filled with tension and quiet hope. And sometimes, after all of that, visits are canceled due to lockdowns or disciplinary actions the family had no part in. For many, this uncertainty becomes normal. Birthdays pass without calls. Holidays arrive without voices. Children learn early how to explain absence to classmates. My dad is away. My brother can't come home yet. The truth is often simplified because the full story hurts too much. If you've ever had someone you love taken out of your life suddenly, comment below, Because the emotional weight carried by these families is rarely acknowledged in conversations about punishment. Inside the prison, that separation cuts deep. Inmates talk about family in fragments. Old photos kept folded inside books. Names etched into skin. Dates memorized because forgetting feels like betrayal. The system understands this vulnerability and often uses it as leverage. Loss of phone privileges. Suspension of visits. Delayed mail. These sanctions aren't just administrative. They are emotional weapons. They remind inmates that connection is conditional, fragile, and easily revoked. Mental health suffers under this pressure. Many inmates arrive at Holman already carrying trauma from poverty, violence, or unstable childhoods. The Alabama solution doesn't pause to address that history, it compounds it. Isolation intensifies anxiety. Constant surveillance breeds paranoia. The need to appear strong suppresses emotion until it manifests in dangerous ways. Depression is widespread. So is emotional numbness. Inmates describe reaching a point where feeling nothing seems safer than feeling anything at all. When vulnerability invites punishment or exploitation, shutting down becomes survival. Counseling exists, but access is limited and inconsistent. Requests can take weeks or months. Sessions are brief. Trust is difficult when confidentiality feels uncertain. And for many, admitting psychological struggle carries stigma that can affect housing, classification, or safety. As you're watching this, pause and ask yourself, does punishment without support lead to change, or does it deepen the damage? Guards witness this deterioration daily. Some become desensitized. Others carry it home. Correctional officers operate in an environment where tension never fully lifts. Hypervigilance becomes routine. Sleep suffers. Relationships strain. Burnout is common. The system rarely acknowledges the mental toll on staff either. When pressure becomes unbearable, empathy erodes. Rules replace judgment. Distance replaces dialogue. This isn't because officers are inhuman. It's because the system demands emotional armor to function. And that armor comes at a cost. Children of incarcerated parents face higher risks of behavioral issues, academic struggles, and future incarceration. This isn't coincidence, it's consequence. Absence shapes identity. Shame shapes silence. And cycles repeat quietly, generation after generation. Communities feel it too. When large numbers of men are removed and returned damaged, unstable, or disconnected, neighborhoods absorb the fallout. Reintegration becomes difficult. Employment is scarce. Trust is fractured. The stigma follows long after release. If you believe prison should reduce crime rather than multiply harm, share this documentary, because these are the conversations that rarely make headlines. Some inmates do try to change. They read. They reflect. They plan. They imagine a future where they are more than their worst mistake. But hope inside Holman is fragile. One lockdown can erase months of progress. One incident can undo years of discipline. Reentry planning exists, but resources are limited. Support networks are inconsistent. And for those released after long-term isolation, the outside world can feel overwhelming. Noise, choice, freedom itself becomes anxiety-inducing. Families expect reunions. Inmates struggle with adjustment. And when support fails, recidivism becomes more likely, not because change is impossible, but because healing was never prioritized. Faith plays a role for many. Prayer, reflection, quiet rituals that offer meaning when structure feels oppressive. Chaplain services provide moments of humanity, but access varies. Even belief becomes regulated by schedules and security. As this chapter unfolds, one reality becomes clear. The Alabama solution doesn't just punish crime. It reshapes identity. It changes how people see themselves, how they relate to others, and how they imagine the future. And once that transformation occurs, it's not easily reversed. If you're still here, subscribe now, because understanding the human cost is essential before we examine the system's future. As Chapter 4 closes, we're left with difficult questions. What does justice mean when punishment extends beyond the individual? When families suffer consequences they never chose? When rehabilitation exists more in theory than in practice? These are not abstract debates. They are lived realities for inmates, for officers, and for entire communities shaped by incarceration. Stay with us. Don't click away. In the final chapter, we confront the future, reform efforts, investigations, and whether the Alabama solution can survive growing national scrutiny. And if this documentary has changed the way you see prisons in America, hit the like button one more time, because the truth deserves to be seen. By the time we reach this point, one thing is undeniable. The Alabama solution is no longer hidden. What once operated quietly behind concrete walls is now under a national spotlight. Lawsuits, investigations, media scrutiny, public pressure. The system that thrived on control and silence is being forced to answer questions it avoided for decades. If you've stayed with us this far, thank you, and make sure you're subscribed, because this final chapter reveals where everything is headed. And if this documentary has challenged your perspective, hit the like button now. It helps ensure these stories continue to be told. For years, Alabama's prison system has faced accusations of overcrowding, understaffing, excessive force, and unconstitutional conditions. Federal investigations have described environments where violence is not an exception, but a predictable outcome of systemic failure. Civil rights groups argue that the Alabama solution does not simply maintain order, it manufactures crisis. State officials, meanwhile, defend the system as necessary. They argue that Alabama houses some of the most dangerous offenders in the country, and that strict control is the only way to prevent chaos. In their view, the solution isn't cruelty, it's containment. This clash of narratives defines the future. On one side are reform advocates pushing for reduced isolation, increased mental health care, improved staffing, and accountability measures. On the other are institutions built on tradition, resistance to change, and fear of losing control. Between them stand thousands of inmates living inside the consequences of that stalemate. If you believe transparency matters, share this video, because reform only happens when the public refuses to look away. Recent years have brought promises of change. New facilities announced, staffing reforms proposed, training programs expanded on paper. But critics argue that progress has been slow, uneven, and often cosmetic. New buildings don't fix old philosophies. Fresh paint doesn't erase psychological damage. Inside Holman, many inmates remain skeptical. They've heard promises before. Change announced from outside doesn't always reach inside. Lockdowns continue. Isolation persists. Overcrowding remains a daily reality. Hope exists, but it's cautious. Some correctional officers welcome reform, recognizing that safer conditions protect them too. Others fear reforms will weaken authority, embolden violence, or place them at risk. Trust between staff and administration is strained, mirroring the distrust between inmates and the system itself. Reform, it turns out, is not just about policy. It's about culture. And culture is the hardest thing to change. As you watch this, drop a comment below. Do you think prison reform is possible within systems built on punishment, or does real change require starting over entirely? The legal system continues to play a central role. Court rulings, consent decrees, federal oversight. These mechanisms force accountability when internal systems fail, but they move slowly. Years pass while cases wind through courts. Meanwhile, life inside the prison continues uninterrupted. For inmates serving long sentences or life, reform isn't abstract. It determines whether they spend decades in isolation or have access to programs that preserve their sanity. It determines whether release, if it ever comes, is survivable. Reentry remains one of the system's greatest challenges. Without education, mental health care, and support, released inmates face overwhelming odds. Many leave prison institutionalized, disconnected, and unprepared for freedom. When failure follows, the system points to recidivism as proof of necessity, without acknowledging its role in creating it. Families continue to wait. Communities continue to absorb the consequences. Cycles continue. And yet, pressure is growing. Public awareness has increased. Documentaries like this one are part of that shift. When stories reach beyond prison walls, silence loses its power. The Alabama solution, once defended through obscurity, now exists under constant observation. If this documentary has informed you, subscribe now, because informed viewers are the foundation of change. The future of Alabama's prison system is uncertain. It may evolve slowly through reform. It may be reshaped by legal mandate, or it may resist until collapse forces transformation. What's clear is that the current system is unsustainable. Control without care breeds instability. Punishment without rehabilitation produces damage. And silence without accountability allows harm to persist. As this series ends, the question is no longer whether the Alabama solution is controversial. The question is whether society is willing to confront what it reveals about justice, power, and punishment in America. Because prisons don't exist in isolation. They reflect the values of the society that builds them. If you've watched this entire documentary, hit the like button one last time. It tells the algorithm and the world that these stories matter. Share this video. Talk about it. Question it. Debate it. And remember, what happens behind prison walls never truly stays there. This has been the Alabama Solution, Exposed. Thank you for watching.